morning.
Good morning.
I don't have a booming voice, so all of you guys way down there, if you need for me to step up the volume, just give me a little this.
Sounding good.
All right. Three things I'd like to touch on today. One is a story of how I got started in prison ministry. The second is an issue that I think is important. It's each of us identifying our gifts so we can serve more and better. And the third is another issue that I think is really important, and that's finishing well. And that's for some of us seasoned citizens.
Seasoned.
So,
That's you, Jim.
my son-in-law Bruce, I love my son-in-law Bruce, but he's kind of rough cut. In fact, he kind of reminds me of Zach or Greg, and I say that affectionately because he's a cement truck driver. He's a big burly guy, but he's got a heart sweet and soft. Well, he came to me about 30 years ago, and he said, "Oh, sir, I want to marry your daughter." And I, "Oh, okay." He said, "But I got some things I need to tell you about myself." I said, "Oh, okay, go ahead, Bruce." The thing I love about Bruce, he's a straight talker. When he speaks from the heart, and not in an obnoxious manner, but he says what's on his mind. And so he starts to tell me this story about how he grew up in Sacramento. And when he was 6 years old, his father committed suicide and left 4 kids with a mother who was a little overwhelmed. She just couldn't really deal with raising those kids. And so the boys, him and his brother, they pretty much went whatever direction they wanted to go. Well, like usually happens, they ended up in gangs. They ended up in a motorcycle gang in Rancho Cordova up in Sacramento. And you know where that leads. Trouble and more trouble and finally jail. And the crime that he got arrested for was pretty serious. His guys got together and figured they would bomb the assistant district attorney's house in Sacramento. Very bad decision. Which to this day, Bruce, after all of these years, Bruce is still suffering from that record, even though he's had his life straightened out for many, many years. But anyway, he was about 17 and he went to jail and he was scared to death. It was as tough as he thought he was. This was a setting that he could see he didn't want to live in. And he was right on, he didn't know whether they were going to charge him as a minor or send him on to prison. And he was really scared about what was going to happen if a 17-year-old turned 18 and went to California State Prison System. So he said, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was so afraid. He says, and this guy came in to jail. His name was Harry. And he told me about Jesus. And he said, if you have Jesus in your heart, your life can change. And he says, I never forgot that. And he said, I've had Jesus in my heart ever since Harry came in and told me that. Well, as I thought about his story and all the things, you know, this guy wants to marry my daughter. I'm really excited about that, right? But I was okay with it because I could see that he was sincere. But what I really reflected on is, I want to be Harry. I want to be Harry. I want to be that guy who can come in, bring Jesus to those who maybe are a little lost and lonely. I says, that's who I want to be. I want to be Harry. Okay, let's fast forward on a year. A year later, I moved down to Oceanside, and my friend, who I met when I went down there, he's a wonderful Christian guy. we went to Gideon's together, which you know is a wonderful Bible organization. So one Saturday morning he calls me up and he says, "Hey Larry, what do you think about going to the Prison Fellowship seminar at the Camp Pendleton Brig next month?" And I said, "Well, Wally, you know, I've never been in jail, and in fact, I don't even know anybody who's been in jail." And then it struck me. My son-in-law Bruce was in jail. And I thought about Harry. And I said, "Okay, Wally, sign me up." And back in that day, a prison fellowship seminar was Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday. It was a real marathon. But went. It was an amazing experience. And it opened the door to about 25 years of, it's almost 25 years I've been in prison ministry. But it was that story that my son-in-law told me, and he didn't know, all he knew was it was Harry. Harry came in and told him about Jesus. And that was the inspiration for me to be in prison ministry for 25 years. But you know, prison ministry isn't for everybody. I don't, after the talk is over, I don't want everybody to jump up from their seats and run over to Chaplain Bill and say, "Give me an application, I want to be in prison ministry." You can if you want to, but I don't know if he's got that many applications. But my point is that we all have gifts. And many different gifts. And God has given us those gifts to equip us to serve His sheep, to serve His people. And we have to identify those gifts. And surprisingly, it's not always easy. One of the things that always amazes me is how many people say, "Well, gee, I'd like to serve, but I don't know what my gift is." Well, I don't know if that's true or if they're just avoiding serving, but it's important to identify your gift. In order to serve, you need to know what it is you're really, where's your passion? What is it that you really like doing, are good at doing? That's where you're going to find your gift, somewhere in that area. When I went to Oceanside, I was kind of thinking, on my heart, I had the homeless, the rescue missions. I thought that's probably where my ministry will probably be. But if I ever did anything wise, and I haven't done that many wise things in my life, I asked God to send me where He wanted me to serve. And I just left it open. I just asked Him, and then I waited. I waited for Him to answer. And when I got that call from Wally to go to the Camp Pendleton Brig, I felt that's the answer. It wasn't exactly where I thought I was going, but it was where God sent me. First Corinthians 12 talks about the gifts. It says, "To one person the Spirit gives the ability to give wise advice. Someone else may be especially good at studying and teaching. And this is his gift from the same Spirit. He gives special faith to another, and to someone else the power to heal the sick. He gives power for doing miracles to some, and to others power to prophesy and preach. He gives someone else the power to know whether evil spirits are speaking through those who claim to be giving God's message, or whether it is really the Spirit of God who is speaking." And just a little sidebar, I think this gift of discernment is one that may not be our main gift, but I think it's one that all of us need to really be aware of and pursue. Because in the society we're living in the world we're living in, there is so much false prophets, evil, you know the news, and we, especially as Christians, need to be able to discern between the truth and the lie. Because there's lots of really attractive, appealing lies out there that can pull us in. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, especially to some of our seasoned citizens here, because even the young guys, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have a heart for God. And so that's preaching to the choir. You guys have all served, even young guys, I know you're serving. You have served because you want to be a tool for God. You want to be pleasing to God. But I think the issue of identifying your gifts, whatever stage of life you're in, sure, you've served in your church, you've been on boards, you've been in leadership positions, you've done a lot for God. But I think my challenge to you is, at this stage of your life, whatever that is, you need to ask God, is there anything else you want me to do? Do you have any other gifts for me to serve with? And then just stand back and wait. Let him tell you when and where, what gifts he wants to give you and use, and where he wants to use you to serve. But I think for us the older generation, we've served a lot of years, and we think, well, I'm not as strong as I used to be. I'm not as energetic as I used to be. Maybe it's time for me to kind of wind down and limit my service and so on and so forth. But I don't think that's what God ever intended for any of us. He intended for us to finish strong and finish well. I heard something the other day, a line that said, it's not over till God says it's over. And he never intended any of us to not serve him to our last breath. And in Psalm 92 is a wonderful encouragement for us older guys, and for the younger guys also, it gives you something to look forward to. Psalm 92 says, "But the godly shall flourish like palm trees, and grow tall as the cedars of Lebanon. For they are transplanted into the Lord's own garden and are under his personal care. Even in old age, they still produce fruit, and they're vital and green. This honors the Lord and it exhibits his faithful care."
Amen.
I think that's admonition for all of us to really finish well. That's one thing I really want you to leave here today with. What can I do? No matter what I've done, that's in the books. What's important is, what am I going to do? Who am I going to serve, and how am I going to serve them? And I know each day I ask the Lord, send me, wherever that is. I mean, I'm not as fast and strong as I used to be, but I can still go. So send me.
That's right.
I think a real inspiration was, as most of you know, Pastor Chuck Smith from Calvary Chapel passed away a couple months ago. And Pastor Chuck had known he had cancer for a couple of years. And of course, I seen him from time to time, and he never you would never know that he was anywhere other than in the arms of God. He was always positive. He was always preaching. He didn't alter his routine of serving God to the degree of whatever degree that his health would permit him. He preached a sermon, his last sermon, like 3 days before he passed away. And I think that's such an inspiration to me, and I hope it's an inspiration to all of us when it comes to the issue of serving well and finishing well. And so my prayer for all of us is that we'll be hairy in whatever ministry we serve in. We'll be hairy, the one who's bringing hope and inspiration to everybody we touch. Just like Zach was saying, that's so important to touch the people near you every day and in every way with the love and blessing of Jesus, because he works through us. He loves us, but he loves all of his sheep, no matter where they are, whether they're in a homeless shelter, in a prison, in a jail. He loves them as much or more than he loves you and me. So I hope that I spoke something that you can take out of this fellowship today and use it in your life, not only to bless the other people, but to bless yourselves. Because when we go in to the jail in French Valley, years ago when we used to go in, this was the attitude: boy, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell them about Jesus, and I'm going to bless these guys and bless their socks off. And then when you walk out after the fellowship is over, to say, why am I so blessed? I thought I was going to bless them.
That's right.
They blessed me. And so that's the fruit. That's the reward of serving. So God bless you all, and thank you for allowing me to talk today.
Thank you, Larry.